Ladies and gentlemen, we are deep in the trenches of COVID still, but we're told there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Boris says that by the end of February, all the old people will have been immunised. Presumably, by the late summer, the whole population can be vaccinated. But not everybody agrees that a vaccination is right for them. There are people who have health concerns. There are people who have religious concerns. There are people who have Bill Gates concerns. What's going to happen with those people? Can the law force you to get the jab? People of the COVID times of 2021. It's law cracking time. So as far as vaccines becoming mandatory are concerned, let's separate some of the fact from the fiction. In the UK, no government will risk the consequences of making a vaccine mandatory. The closest we've come is nearly 170 years ago in 1853, when in the UK, there were fines for people who did not take the smallpox vaccine. Of course, 1 in 3 people died from smallpox, so it's probably not that comparable with COVID, where the death rate is so much lower. If any of you guys have seen a social media Facebook video in the last few days saying, guys, there's going to be mandated vaccines for everybody. You're going to go to prison if you don't have a vaccine. No. There's nothing in the Coronavirus Act that mentions anything to do with mandating a vaccine. In fact, biggest surprise, perhaps, is that Boris Johnson, not known for his clarity and singularity of message over the last year or so, has been uncharacteristically clear and direct on it. He says something like, I strongly urge people to take up the vaccine. It is not part of our culture in this country to force people to take medication. It is not how we do things. Now that, to me, suggests that there aren't going to be any fines, and there's not going to be any punishments for people who don't take the vaccine. But is that the end of it? Well, guys, you know by now, this is Lawcracker, so the answer is a big, fat no. Not according, anyway, to Britain's richest plumber, Charlie Mullins, for whom vaccines are more than a pipe dream. You may recognise this guy. He's kind of a little bit like Rod Stewart, but he's not. He says, no vaccine, no job. And he's been all over the media in the past few days saying, I am getting new contracts of employment for all of my staff so they get vaccinated. And here's the interesting thing. Lawcracker's prediction is this is one of many stories of employers and even state organisations who will be requiring the same. Charlie Mullins says, well, we go off to Africa or the Caribbean and we have to have a jab for malaria and we don't think anything of it, but this disease is everywhere and it's affecting us right here, so why should this be any different? But will the UK courts allow Charlie to enforce such a contract? And the answer is maybe. His plumbers are probably in several houses in the course of one day, having contact with lots of different people. One could see why that might be a proportionate request to make. And a court will consider, is that instruction a reasonable instruction to get the vaccine? Well, it'll depend on all kinds of circumstances. If somebody's allergic to a vaccine, is that a reasonable instruction? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to realise that the answer is no. If it's a question of a religious objection, there are certain medical procedures that a Jehovah's Witness would reject. And even Pope Francis had to give the Catholic community across the world guidance that the vaccine is ethically acceptable to Catholics. So certainly religious belief systems are taken account of when it's considered whether something is reasonable, either in a contract of employment or whatever else. However, we have a new phenomenon now, don't we? We have this anti-vaxxer movement. People who say, I don't care, I don't trust the credibility of any of this. I think Big Pharma are these bad guys who are doing bad things. They don't agree with the vaccine on a point of principle. What about that belief? Does the anti-vaxxer movement legally qualify as a belief system? Well, it's never been tested in a UK court, but this will almost certainly reach at least the High Court or even the Court of Appeal. Now that's the plumbers, but there is a type of worker who is much more important to us on a daily basis, and that is the staff of the NHS. What of them? Now they are in contact with vulnerable people every day who are in their care and relying on them. And they don't just have to be conspiracy theorists who don't believe in vaccines. They might just be people who think, hang on a minute, well, the vaccine's been rolled out a little bit too quickly. I'm unsure of this. I want to do it in the second wave. You know, that sounds a little bit less unreasonable, doesn't it? And how do we view that as people? Is the the issue that their personal choice has to be then balanced against their duty to protect their patients, people in their care, rather than infect them. Well, it's very difficult, isn't it? Because at the same time, we are relying massively on those people. And that's why keeping people off the front line if they're regarded as a risk because they won't get vaccinated, those types of measures to minimise risk are going to be much more effective when we, at the moment, can't afford to lose a single nurse, a single orderly, a single doctor. Everybody there is so important right now, and no government will mess with them. So basically, it stops being such a legal question and ends up being more of a practical question. What are the circumstances? What's your health situation? What's your belief system? Is what you're suggesting reasonable? Can you be kept away from vulnerable people in the course of your job? These are the types of questions that could be asked. And how much are you relied upon? Because the NHS is so much relied upon, they have to be treated with kid gloves because we all owe them so much, not just for what's happened over the last year, but for what they've done for generations in a pretty thankless circumstances, right? So if they can't force you, with a few exceptions, and Charlie Mullins has got his views on that, what can they do? Just because they can't force you, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be able to access things that perhaps until recently you thought were a right, but you've since realised are a privilege. Foreign travel, going to gigs, going to football, they're optional, and the courts are unlikely to help you in those types of circumstances. Think, for example, about this new idea of vaccine passports. Imagine this. Your life goes back to exactly how it was 18 months ago. You just have to have a vaccine passport. Pretty tempting, isn't it? All the freedoms that you used to enjoy. Would you take the vaccine? The decision that we all face may be as simple as that one, and the law probably won't help us if we disagree. It's a choice. It's not forced, it's not mandatory, and what are the other options? Well, you can always stay at home, watch more episodes of Lawcracker. This was the Lawcracker. Tell me what you think. Please like, share, subscribe. Somewhere here. I really appreciate all the support that you guys have been giving. I've had some excellent messages from you guys direct. You've given me some awesome comments. It's really motivating me to do some more. I've had some violent abuse. Please don't send me any of that. I'm a nice guy. I've also had some really cool look-alike comments. One guy said that I look like this guy from the 1960s. He's a ukulele player called Tiny Tim. Yeah, thanks. Somebody of a more charitable nature said that I look like the short one from Take That. That appears to be this guy. Yep, I am really enjoying the feedback I'm getting on these Lawcracker guys. Check out some of my other videos and watch this space. There's more stuff coming. Also look out for the long-form Lawcracker podcast that I'm going to be doing in the next few weeks, interviewing interesting and celebrated lawyers with their unusual takes on the way that law works today. If there's anyone that you think I should be speaking to, let me know in the comments. Lawcracker out.